would win in a fight, Nietzsche or Kant? Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's riff of the week. Y'all asked me some really great but also some really weird questions on my AMA post, not only in the community tab for subscribers on YouTube, but also on my social media spots. So here's my great but also weird answers. We'll start with YouTube because thank you so much to everyone for being subscribed, but don't worry, I'm going to get to all the questions from Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Threads and all that good stuff too. K2BNY. Are there any Christian metal bands that you enjoy? So my first instinct is to pick August Burns Red, but you might say, John, that's not a Christian metal band. That's a metal band who happen to be Christians. So if I can't pick August Burns Red, then we'll go with Become the Archetype. That is a killer Christian metal band. Next up, Autistonaut. Great name, by the way. What is your most anticipated album of 2024? Dude, so many. There's going to be so many great albums this year. Last year was kind of the year of the OGs. We got new albums from Cannibal Corpse, Dying Fetus, Autopsy, Incantation. I mean, so many legendary bands dropped albums last year. And I think this year is going to be the year of the young bloods. We're going to get new albums from hopefully 200 Stab Wounds, hopefully Half. And I'm really looking forward to, please, hopefully, New Rivers of Nile. Next up, George Angel, Happy New Year from Greece. What is your favorite movie/TV show? Well, to be honest, I don't really watch a lot of TV and movies. You know, I've got 4 jobs, and when I do have downtime, I like to kind of play video games usually, maybe read a book. However, to answer your question in good faith, the movie that had the biggest impact on me was The Matrix. That really kick-started the philosophy in my mind. You know, some people might think of it as just a silly action movie or sci-fi movie, but there's a lot of philosophy going on in that movie, and it really, truly, I don't mean this as an exaggeration, changed the way I think about the world. And then by that same token, for a TV show, you know, it'd be real easy for me to say Metalocalypse. Of course, I love that TV show. But again, philosophically, I'm going to go with Firefly. You know, again, a lot of people might say it's just a fun, adventurous sci-fi show. But Malcolm Reynolds' overarching philosophy was that, you know, he couldn't defeat the system, so he went out into the emptiness of space where he could be himself. And that really appeals to me. Next up, Never Forget 14. Who had the most deep and philosophical lyrics of 2023? Well, here's where I got to be honest with you. I really don't know what most of the lyrics I listen to are. You know, my favorite bands are Cannibal Corpse and, you know, 200 Stab Wounds and Tribal Gaze. And honestly, I really can't understand what they're saying. To me, in death metal, the vocals are kind of just another instrument. I often view them as like a percussive instrument. But with that being said, to answer your question in good faith, again, one of my favorite bands, Rivers of Nile, you know, my 2021 album of the year, The Work. I think The Work is a philosophical as well as musical work of art. And last year they dropped the single Suborbital Blues. If you look at the lyrics on that song, I mean, there's a lot going on there. You know, I like these kind of lyrics where it makes you think about what they're saying, and it'd be easy to have one interpretation, but it'd be really easy to have another interpretation as well. Suborbital Blues does that for me. Next up, the legend Yo3FW. Do you have a band? The answer is technically no. You know, most of my most successful years in bands were in the late 2000s and the 2010s. And then after that, I was in other bands as well. And then the pandemic just totally ended that. The reason why I hesitate is because My writing partner moved away, and so I kind of thought that was that. But he might be moving back, and if he does, I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm super busy. As I said, I got 4 jobs, but he wants to record some stuff. I want to record some stuff. Maybe we do some stuff. Next up, Wizard X666. Great name, by the way. Greatest no-skip album of all time. Well, I guess this is kind of a cop-out. I can't really pick just one. I've got a lot of those albums. There's a lot of albums that I just absolutely love front to back. The most important albums in my development, in my life, and in my thinking, and in my personal style are And Justice for All, Blackwater Park, The Satanist, non-metal. There's a lot of albums that I love too. Obviously Pink Floyd, The Wall, and Dark Side of the Moon. Man, the Temple of the Dog album was incredible. There's several blues albums that I think are just standard bearers. I couldn't possibly pick one. I can't really do that. But those are the ones that I just put on all the time and can't skip. If I had to pick a new album, I would go Hath All That Was Promised. Next up, friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, who has a horror movie YouTube channel you should check out. He asks, what is the song that gives you chills that never gets old? You still listen to it to this day. Well, I got a bunch of these too, but for the sake of brevity, let me just pick 2. We'll go with The Drapery Falls by Opeth, and we'll go with Is There Anybody Out There by Pink Floyd. Next up, GRV16, who asked, what's my favorite metal band? What's my favorite non-metal band? And what kind of farming do we do? Y'all, I can't just pick one. I obviously love Opeth. I love Metallica. I like Behemoth. I love Rivers of Nile. And Hath is probably my favorite newer band. I can't just pick one. It really depends on the day. As for my favorite non-metal band, I probably could pick one. That's probably Pink Floyd. There's several other bands I could list though. I mean, dude, I love music. And as far as what kind of farming we do, we grow vegetables and we have chickens, so we get a lot of eggs. And then the donkeys and the goats are just because we love animals. It's vegetables and eggs. Next up, Joel White asks, who'd win in a fight, Nietzsche or Kant? Well, truthfully, I don't really know. There was no MMA back then, and so I don't know what kind of training they had, and skills are what wins fights. However, to answer the question, let's theorize, okay? So, yeah, Nietzsche he was a proponent of physical fitness, but he eventually became pretty sickly. So I'm going to go with Kant. And also, Nietzsche talked a lot of shit about other philosophers. He was really petty. He absolutely hated Aristotle, and he talked a gang of shit about his contemporaries. And in my experience, dudes that like to talk shit about other dudes usually can't fight. Next up, VDoom777. Yeah, I want to be featured. It would make my life complete. So I will ask, what do I have to do to like such utter nonsense as the stuff that Yellow Eyes put out? Do I have to embrace my inner hipster and sit there with a latte mocha coffee and sip it with my pinky extended? Do I have to let out a big ha-ha and raise my head to a 45-degree angle every time someone tells a lame joke? Pressing questions. I don't know if y'all have noticed or not, but I normally don't respond to negative comments, but I asked for it. I put out a post in the community tab asking for your questions, and only subscribers see it, which I find this kind of surprising that a subscriber would have that kind of attitude about my opinions, but okay, here we go. I'll answer it in good faith. You're not the first person that has called me a hipster for liking the Yellow Eyes album Master's Murmur from last year. Several other people also called me a hipster, and I don't really understand that. How can you be a hipster when it comes to black metal? Nobody likes that shit, okay? And also, in reality, I'm worse than a hipster. I don't drink cafe mocha lattes. I'm that insufferable asshole that drinks black coffee. I'm that motherfucker that shows up at the coffee shop and doesn't know how to order a large coffee. I'm the one holding up the line like, dude, I just want black coffee in the biggest cup you got. And everybody's like, Italian word. Is that what you mean? I'm like, no, I mean a black coffee in the biggest cup you got. So here's the truth, okay? There's a thing in hipsterdom, right? Obviously, elitists who only like the finest of whatever, they're insufferable, right? However, what you're doing with this is meta-elitism. You're the guy that's like, I'm not an elitist. I like all of names things that are obviously not elitist, so that you can separate yourself from the insufferable hipsters, when in fact, that's making you a mega hipster. The reason why I picked Yellow Eyes is because I like what I like. That's it. I like what I like. You don't have to like it. There's plenty of other lists out there. And also, before I say this, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's not like that. You're clearly in the majority, and that's why I mostly only interact with you all. You know, I don't let these 1% comments bother me so much, but it's just strange that I can't win for losing when it comes to them, because on the one hand, and this is why I ignore these comments, on the one hand, last year's album of the year episode, somebody says something to the effect of, what is this? A hipster's list of bands nobody's ever heard of. And by that same token, if I name any bands that are any kind of successful, somebody else will be in the comments going, yeah, you picked all the mainstream bands. What can I do? I can do nothing, and I will do nothing, because the real answer is I like what I like. You can like it, you can hate it, that's fine. We're all different, and that's why there's more than one person doing this metal thing on YouTube, because there's a lot of different opinions being represented. Next up, from Nick Kakos. Happy New Year, all the best to you and your loved ones. You too, my friend. I have two questions. What was the song or album that got you into metal? The one that made you say, yep, this is my kind of music. And second, is there a band, although critically acclaimed, you just can't get into and you don't understand where all the hype comes from? Thanks, a bunch of compliments. Thank you so much for the compliments. All the best from Tasmania. Hell yeah, I can't believe somebody from Tasmania knows about this show. Thank you so much. All right, so the first question is pretty easy. I remember being a little kid and I was getting into rock and roll, and I was really leaning towards the heavier side. I liked AC/DC and some of the heavier Aerosmith songs. And then I heard One by Metallica playing late at night on MTV, and it just completely changed my life. All that stuff that I thought was heavy, I was like, no, that's not heavy. This is heavy. That thing, yeah. From that point on, I knew this is it. And as far as bands that are critically acclaimed that I'm not into, there's lots of those. It's just a matter of taste, you know. I'm not really into Iron Maiden. Pretty much any of the kind of bands, you know, that's just not my thing. I respect the OGs and all their accomplishments and all of their contributions to the genre. There'd be no Metallica without Iron Maiden. But just for me personally, that style, any of those like power metal style, I'm not really in the Dream Theater, any of the kind of singing, just that's not for me. I'm a caveman. I need to, that's what I need. Next up, Chris Bankatz. Sorry, dude, I don't know. Is Anthem Part 3 by Blink-182 metal? Well, I've never really been a Blink-182 fan, but regardless of that fact, it's pop punk. I hesitate to call it metal, but to give credit where credit is due, even though I really don't think it's metal, these lyrics right here, and after you had the time of your life, flatlined and led toward the light, you'll despair the wreckage and find no one gave a fuck that you died. Those lyrics are pretty metal. Next up from Andriaman. Given that in 2023 we had lots of debut albums, which band would you say is the most promising among them? For me, it's Moonlight Sorcery. When I put out my best black metal albums of 2023 episode, there was more comments shouting out the greatness of Moonlight Sorcery than any other band. It was a pretty much consensus. So shout out to Moonlight Sorcery. For me personally, I'm going to go with the Anchor It. I can't express enough how much I love that album. I'm really looking forward. I mean, it's so progressive as a debut. What are they going to sound like 2 albums in? I don't know. And then as far as like mainstream success, I'm really looking at Lions at the Gate. Next up, from Terry Wormsbecker. So what are your thoughts and feelings about metal music in general constantly being shunned by society in general? I'm a 55-year-old metalhead who was a teenager in the 80s, and Ozzy, Judas Priest, Venom, and Twisted Sister, just to name a few, were all blamed in one form or another for the violent behavior of teens. Do you think it's warranted or not to blame someone else's self-expression in metal music for violent and disturbing behavior? No, it's not warranted. Everybody's always looking for an easy scapegoat, because the actual answer for people's violent and disturbing behavior is a much more difficult problem to tackle. It's much harder to do the work of, hey, some parents are bad parents, or hey, society failed this person in this way. That's an impossible problem to solve. But it's super easy to just say, well, this is Metallica's fault. This is Cannibal Corpse's fault. This is Ozzy's fault. So no, I don't think it's warranted. And I don't think that metal is alone here. Pop music is also being blamed for the depravity of the children. It's always whatever is the easiest scapegoat. And to add something that maybe you didn't ask, there's a great quote that I'm pulling right off the top of my head, so I'm probably going to get it wrong in paraphrasing it, but it's basically, it's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick world. Okay? That's us metalheads. We recognize that society is ridiculous, and we have rightfully ascertained that fact. It's not that we're messed up, it's that we see reality as it really is. Next up, from OG of the community, Noghead. Happy New Year, John. Do you have some ideas of the direction you'd like to take your channel this year? Do you prefer it to grow organically and take things week by week? Your production and interview skills have continued to improve over the past couple of years. It's very impressive. Congrats on your success and good luck in 2024. Well, first of all, thank you. That was very nice. Much appreciate the compliments, but even more so, I really appreciate Noghead's been here since the beginning. Back when I was getting like 16 views per episode, back when my thumbnails were black and shitty and my titles were just generic and I just kind of rambled and I talked real slow like some sort of Kmart Sam Harris. Noghead was there, and he has been here through the growth and the development. So thank you for the compliments, but most importantly, thank you for sticking by me. I really, really appreciate that from you. As far as the direction I want to take it, I just want to keep getting better. I really did not expect for the channel to take off the way that it did, and I really did not expect for some of the opportunities I've gotten to come along, getting to a concert photography pass to a Cannibal Corpse show. I mean, I never, ever expected that to happen. That's crazy. So knowing that now I have something that can help me do cool shit, that's what I want to do. I just want to do cool stuff. We got monetized last year, and as I expected, it's not just YouTube. I mean, just metal in general. There's no money in this shit. I'm very happy that last year I made enough money to pay for the show, to pay for the hosting of the podcast and some of the services I use. it paid for itself last year. So that in and of itself is a huge blessing that I'm very thankful for. But yo, I ain't quitting my day job anytime soon. So just the opportunity to do cool stuff, to be a part of the metal community, that I just want more of that. Just to get better. Better at what I do and better at service. Next up from King Diamond Scream. What is the metal album that best represents the philosophy of Hegel? So I really got two answers here. One of the things that I get from Hegel, he's got a lot of different concepts, but one of the things that I got from him is that there is value to be gleaned from every era of history. We tend to look at history like this long march of progress, like we're so much better than the people of the past, and in many ways we are, but Hegel argued that there were certain virtues that past societies had that might be missing from modern societies. And so while in this degree modern society is better than historical society, in this degree maybe they were a little bit better. There's always something we can learn from every era. So with that in mind, I'm going to pick pretty much any album from Sabaton, because they take so much from history and they really love to extol the virtues of historical figures. Now, Sabaton's not really my thing. I'm not into power metal. So I'll give you another answer in case you also aren't into power metal. There's this new band called Sublation, which is also a concept from Hegel. And on Twitter, the guy that runs the Sublation Twitter account, he's really made me think about philosophy. He had this really good critique of Stoicism that I appreciated a couple of years ago. I very much enjoy following them on Twitter, and it's killer technical death metal. Next up, from Mr. Round the Twist, is ghost metal, and who cares if it's not? Well, you answered your own question. Who cares if it's not? If you like Ghost, go for it. I don't like Ghost. I said earlier in the episode, I'm not really into, I don't like that kind of singing. But all respect where respect is due. As a band, super talented. And as a matter of fact, on their last album, they got the dude from Opeth to play lead guitar on it. So I got nothing but respect for the band. I understand why other people like them. The question is Ghost brutal? And no, they're not brutal, but they are metal. All right, and now that we're done with the YouTube questions, let's go to Instagram. And several came from this guy whose name is like, and I have no idea how to pronounce it. And I think he did that on purpose. I think he was in a live stream one point, and he said that that's how he maintains his anonymity, or she. So we'll just go from here. How has metal shaped your interest in philosophy? It seems death metal made you more interested in philosophy of death, but have, for example, grindcore's politics increased your engagement with left-wing progressive philosophies? Or did black metal increase your engagement with nihilism or Nietzsche? So I've always been attracted to death metal. If I had to pick a philosophy, some philosophers tend to pick a lane and go down it. Dudes that love Stoicism, they really love Stoicism. Postmodernists, they really love postmodernism. I'm not an expert in any of them. I'm more of a dabbler in everything. But if I had to pick one, I would go with absurdism. That's my favorite. That's the one that gives me the most pleasure to read, which is just a branch of existentialism. Because, I understand that we're all going to die. And I think that life has no meaning. So I'm just naturally attracted to death metal. That's kind of a chicken and the egg question. But to answer your question, I'm not really in the grindcore, so that didn't really give me a lot of exposure to the left wing. Just being on metal Twitter in general has given me a lot of exposure to the left wing, because in metal there's not really a lot of centrists. There's a lot of hard left guys, a lot of hard right guys, and not a lot in between. At least we just don't really talk that much online. Now, black metal has introduced me to a lot of misanthropy. So there's some philosophical stuff that I otherwise wouldn't have encountered. I was kind of already in the Nietzsche because that famous line, God is dead, which, by the way, now that I've read on it, is highly misunderstood. It's not really a proclamation as much as it is a warning, but you've got more questions, so let's get to that. He also asks, how has philosophy shaped your journalism? When it comes to philosophy, after studying it, I understand now that ethics is the hardest thing in life to do. You know, a lot of us have this really low bar when it comes to morality. If I was to ask you about somebody that you know, if I say, hey, that person that you know, how is that person? Most of the time you'd be like, oh yeah, that's a good dude. But why is that a good dude? You know, that person's never robbed you, never hustled you or defrauded you, or never physically assaulted you. Just all of your interactions have been decent, right? So good dude. But do they give to the needy? You know, do they make the big sacrifices for the betterment of others? And more importantly, if life was hard for them, if they were starving, would they still not steal from you? There's a saying that says it's easy to be an angel in paradise, and I think about that all the time. It's really easy for me to be a good person while things are going well. Last year, I was injured and I was in excruciating pain for 6 months of the year. I mean, literally nonstop I couldn't think about anything else. Excruciating pain, literally no relief, never a time where I didn't think about it. And it was really hard for me to do something as simple as be present and patient with my wife. And it was very much a struggle to do that. Now, my journalism and metal, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You know, I write album reviews for an online magazine, but I take it seriously, the ethic of it, and I realize now that it's difficult work. You know, I don't want the Heavy Metal Philosophy YouTube channel to be a drama channel, even though that's the easy way to get clicks. And I play the YouTube game. I try to make good thumbnails and titles, but I'm trying really hard to skirt that balance between, you know, doing the things that's going to take to succeed. Because if I name a video something like my chat with my philosophy buddy about existentialism, and then the thumbnail is just black with no words, not my face, 12 people are going to watch that. You know, so I have to play the game somewhat, but I definitely want to avoid TMZing it. So just small ethical things have affected my journalism, and also just studying philosophy it's helped me be analytical, insofar as that's a small skill that I'm still working on. I'm not the best at, but it makes me think about it. Do you think metal should have a moral responsibility to society? No, I don't. Individuals have a moral responsibility to society, but metal as an art form is really a response to society, so no, I don't think so. Has metal's philosophical value to society diminished as themes such as Satan, death, and gore have become passé? I definitely think it's harder for metal to be subversive. You know, black metal is still pretty subversive, but it's so hard to listen to that it's really not getting through to the people that would be pissed off by it anyway. Like you said, death metal's pretty passé. So I think the next frontier as far as value to society is going to be the direction that a band like Sleep Token is taking metalcore towards. You know, more dealing with obsession rather than just being the antithesis to Christian society, because that role's already being fulfilled in many other places. So exploring other things like obsession, like hedonism, sexual sort of addictions, that sort of thing. I think that's the next frontier. What do you think the role of AI should be in journalism and in metal music? I'm particularly interested in your response to this, given the philosopher Nick Bostrom's impact on shaping discourse around AI. Well, I might be a boomer and a Luddite, but I think AI has no role in journalism and metal. I can't see a place where I think it's ethical for a journalist to use AI to write their articles. Maybe I could grant some leeway using AI to punch up your titles. Definitely not write your articles. And I don't want any of my bands using AI to write their music. And I'm not really a big fan of AI album art. But that's not to say that I don't think that AI has a place in society. I think there's a lot of problem solving that it can do that's beneficial to humankind. There's a lot of stuff in video games that it can help. There's services that it can make things more efficient. But as far as any form of art when it comes to like writing or music, nah, get that out of here. Next up from Ben Castile, which was your favorite concert of your life so far? When will you come to Lowland Fest? And which is the most metal animal in your opinion? My favorite concert, I think, is 9 Inch Nails indoors. I've seen them several times. Outdoors, they're good, but indoors, there's no presentation. There's no light show. There's no special effects that beats 9 Inch Nails indoors. I was in the crowd, and it felt like things were coming at me off the stage. Like at one point, there's a screen in front of the band. You can only see their silhouettes rocking out behind the screen, and then the glass breaks during the heavy part, and it seemed like in 3D the glass was coming out into the audience, to where I literally reacted like that. There was times when the lights would come off the stage and it felt like there was a cage of light in the audience. Even to this day, I don't really know how they did that. That was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever been in. And then the last couple of years, getting to do concert photography, that's been a whole different experience. Being that close to Corpse Grinder was amazing. So there's that. And then you said, when will I come to Lowland Fest? Let me look that up real quick. Looks like Lowland Fest is in Hungary. That's going to be pretty tough for me, boss. I would love to. I definitely would love to visit Hungary. That would be amazing. If I can do it, I will do it. And as far as metal animal, octopus, they live really short lives. They're really smart, monstrous, carnivorous, formless. Yeah, octopus. Next up from Sarah Kings, who, by the way, is working on a new album. So y'all make sure y'all check out Sarah Kings. She's been on this podcast twice. Excellent musician. My old bandmate, she asked, how'd you get so cool? Shit, I don't know. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose where I was born. I didn't choose a lot of the experiences I had. Just doing the best that I can. But I will say, a lot of the things we went through shaped me, so you played a part. Next up from Reduce Right Music, another great musician you should check out. Your favorite metal band for their lyrics. Rivers of Nile. The work. I think about the message of that album all the time. The easy analysis is the Sisyphean nature of work, but there's a lot of other concepts in that album that when you think about it a second time, you're like, what does that mean? I like that. Next up from Seamus Seamuson, your favorite Cannibal Corpse record. Is it cheating to say torturing and eviscerating? I know that's not a proper album, it's a collection, but two of my favorite Cannibal songs are Scourge of Iron and Evisceration Plague. Plus there's a bunch of other great songs on that one, I Come Blood. So, dude, all my favorites are on that one. Is that cheating? Another one from Reduce Right. Why does metal music, seemingly so negative, bring me so much relief and joy? It's so counterintuitive. It's catharsis, my friend. and also a little bit of escapism. We don't really ask these same questions of violent movies, violent video games. And maybe some people ask about the video games, but definitely not the movies. We don't mind watching an ass-kicking movie and any of the moral implications there. But if we saw these same violent acts being perpetrated on like a security cam, it would rightfully revolt moral people. It's about the fact that it's not real. Next up from Kreider's Barbecue Bash, how much of the Satanism in black metal do you think is theistic? Just another way of describing humanism and naturalism, or just for the sake of sounding evil and not actually philosophical or religious at all? I think it really depends on the band. I think a lot of them are satanic, and I think a lot of them are merely being adversarial. They're satanic in the LaVey sense, where it's really more about themselves. They don't actually believe in Satan, but they really want to piss off Christians. Yeah, black metal's not a monolith. Sorry, I couldn't give you a better answer than that, but I do really think there's a big difference between, say, Gorgoroth and Behemoth. Next up, Raptor King. How do you feel about alternative metal, or like new metal in the late 90s, early 2000s era? Well, to be honest, I hate most of it, but like all genres, there are some gems in there that I absolutely love. I put out that video saying that Seven Dust is the best new metal band, and I stand by that. I really love Seven Dust. Slipknot sometimes is considered a new metal band. I think Slipknot is great when they're great. I really dug Static X. There's several great bands from that era, and there's several that I don't like. Next up from Rannoch Band, how important is unique physical packaging in the overall enjoyment of an album? I think it's a range. It ranges from very important to not important. Let me explain. Ultimately, the music has to be good first. No mass or lore or gimmick is ever going to get a band over if the music isn't good first. Once the music is good, how do you cut through the noise? Because there's so many other bands that are also good. And a good album cover can help you stand out from the other bands. And in that regard, I think it's very important. And then you can take it to the next level above that. If your album is some sort of a concept album, if there's some sort of a theme or philosophy that you're trying to espouse, if the album cover can help with that expression, like for instance Pink Floyd's The Wall or Wish You Were Here, then that's the next level. Next up, Todd Moore asks, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? I don't know, dude. I've never given you an unladen swallow. Next up, from Filthy Casual Media, and if you love video games, check out his channel. How do you feel punk contributed to modern metal? More ways than I could possibly list in a single episode, but my favorite thing is after Motorhead, when it became okay for metalheads to like punk and punk to like metal, I really like that it was okay for metal bands to make statements about society. I think metal got away from that. When it became about strength and bombast and fantasy, it got away from what made it great, and some people will say keep politics out of metal. Never mind that the first metal band, Black Sabbath, was hugely anti-war with scathing societal critiques. And so after Motorhead, when that element became okay again, thank you, punk, for that. Next up, from I Am the Capsules, thoughts on habitual metacognition when paired with an absurdist philosophy. Well, this one's going to be difficult for me to answer without talking to you personally. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I think you'll really enjoy my next episode with philosopher and PhD candidate in metal studies David Burke, because we talk about that very thing. We talk about absurdism, and the fact that life has no meaning, and yet we still continue on with these different projects. We still aim to achieve things. We still give our lives our own purpose. And in order to achieve those things, that sort of habitual planning and pattern recognition that's required to achieve those things, it's a part of it. Again, I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, but I'm an absurdist, I think. I don't think that life really means anything. I don't really think that anything I'm doing is all that important. And yet here I am carrying on. Why? Well, it's because I like it. Next up from Tenta, with all the genre bending happening in trending metal, do you think it's a disadvantage in our current scene to be purely death or doom? Well, I think that depends entirely on the band. I think if you're going to be strictly a genre, then you need to try to be excellent at it. In some ways, I think a lot of the genre bending is kind of a cheat code to sound different. Whereas it's much more difficult to stand out if you stick to a tried and true genre. If you're going to start a thrash band, it's going to be pretty difficult to stand out amongst the rest of the thrash bands. You know, and I do love a couple of genre bends as far as like Death Doom, Blackened Death, Blackened Thrash. You know, I like that sort of thing, but even those are becoming their own genres. So again, I'm going to say it really depends on the band. I think if you really want to do something that's not been done before, maybe the genre bending is a cheat code to do that. It's way easier to say mix R&B and gent than it is to come up with a whole new genre. And by that same token, it's pretty hard to be a death metal band that sounds different than other death metal bands. So either way you go, I think you should just focus on excellence. Next up, from a real heavy metal philosopher, from Dr. Gregory B. Sadler, he has an excellent philosophy YouTube channel. I very often go to his channel because he's a PhD in philosophy. He's an actual professor. He really understands these concepts, but more importantly, on his YouTube channel, he does a very good job of explaining it in such a way that medium to dumb guy like me can understand it. So I very much appreciate Dr. Sadler's YouTube channel, and it's kind of an honor for him to ask me a question on my channel. What are you looking for? The eternal question. I've kind of gotten to the place where I'm not really looking for anything. I've achieved almost everything I've wanted out of life. I've got a great wife. My son is grown and he's a good person. I've got my cabin in the woods with my animals and my farm. My metal show is doing pretty well, far better than I thought it would. What else could I really want out of life? But that's a weird question because it's not like I can stop. It's not like I can just be like, okay, I got everything I want, I'm done. And then just do what? Sit on the couch and watch TV? That's not the kind of life that I want to live. I want to keep doing. I want to work on the farm. I want to still lift weights. If there's any way that I can make my marriage even stronger, that's great. If this show grows, it's not really about the amount of subscribers. The amount of cool things that I was able to do last year because of this show, I never would have believed that was going to happen. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like, what's next? And whatever it is, like, I'm not planning for some big goal. Whatever cool thing, whatever opportunity arises, I want to do that. I want to do cool stuff. That's what I'm looking for. Next up, from one of the finest gentlemen in metal Twitter, Mr. Andy Lawrence asks, just how terrible is the Ulud album by Morbid Angel? All right, I got a confession to make. I don't really know a lot about Morbid Angel. See, my backstory is I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household, and it took me a while to admit to myself that I didn't believe. It took me a good long while. Even after I stopped going to church, that was a big leap for me to make, because the way I was raised, if you're an atheist, you're going to hell, and I don't want to go to hell. So to admit that to myself was a big deal. And during that whole time, I missed out on a lot of great stuff. Like, I'm going back now and listening to Deicide, because back during that era, I just couldn't bring myself to listen to Deicide. It was way too blasphemous. I didn't want to go to hell. And now that I've gotten over that, I've got some catching up to do. Deicide is my next project. I want to listen to their stuff and figure out what that was all about. And I should probably do some Morbid Angel as well. Last year's project was Immolation, and I'm frankly pissed off that I missed all of Immolation's heyday, but thankfully they're still rocking strong. That was a lot of questions. And let me give you a little peek behind the curtain when it comes to podcasting / YouTube. When you start one of these, you start with 0 subscribers, 0 listeners, and you're trying to make content, and you get a couple of people following you on social media, and you want to do one of these Q&A episodes, and you put out the post, and nobody asks you any questions. It's a really deflating feeling. And so I did that a while back, and I got like 3 or 4 questions, not enough to really fill an episode. And then in the last couple of weeks, somebody requested for me to do a Q&A episode. And I thought, okay, well, the show has definitely grown a lot over the past year. Maybe now there's enough people where I'll get some questions. So when I put out those posts on social media and so many people ask questions, that made me feel so good. That is definitely a marker of where we've grown to. So thank you so much for engaging and being a part of the community. I very much appreciate that. We're going to have so much more content coming up. I do feel that this was kind of all over the place, so I don't know how often I'll do these. Depends on how much you ask for them, I guess. But that being said, I've got so much content in the pipe coming up that I'm excited to share with you. We'll get there as we get there, but I just really wanted to say thank you. And this week's riff of the week will be Hellbirds by Rivers of Nile. Somebody asked me what my most anticipated album is. Have I said Rivers of Nile enough times this episode? Have I said Pink Floyd enough times this episode? So we'll go with Hellbirds, Rivers of Nile. And if you want to catch another great Heavy Metal Philosophy episode and you're on YouTube, just click right here. If you're audio only, links in the description. But most importantly, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.